Look, ultimately, it comes down to your business and its goals. So, there's all these different channels that you can use to basically create awareness about your business or your brands.
What is the thing or things that you've had to quit in order to become successful?
I certainly had to quit
thinking it was too
the
big.
person that I was to get here.
being afraid that I was going to make mistakes. I quickly learned that the road to success is paved with failure.
Would you rather have 5 minutes with your older self or your younger self?
Younger.
Nice. That's a good choice. I would think that most people would say, oh, I just want to see what my older self would be like.
No, I've made peace with that guy.
Good, good.
Yeah.
Would you rather walk on the moon or have the ability to communicate with animals?
Communicate with animals.
Hmm, very nice. Would you rather go to a comedy show performance or the opera?
Comedy any day of the week. And one of my really good friends is an opera. He's an opera tenor.
Nice.
Yeah.
Welcome, guys, to another episode of Successful Quitters, a podcast that highlights the thing or things individuals have had to quit to become successful. Today, we have someone very special. He owns a digital marketing agency and he has gifted himself with the leisure of traveling to 23 countries. Let's see how this went. Welcome, Marco Assanti.
Thank you. What an introduction. I'll just let you know it's actually 71 countries so far.
Oh my goodness, why do I have
Yeah.
23?
I
71.
think might have been a typo, but yeah, I'm still continuing to travel.
Ah, 71 countries. Never mind. So it's like three times more. Good for you. Good for you. What an amazing experience. I would love to go, Marco, back to your early beginnings. So let's go back to your younger self. Where were you at? Where did you live? And what was life like at 5 years old for you?
Okay, so I grew up in a place just west of Sydney. So I'm from Australia, if you can't tell from my accent. But there's a town probably 2 hours west of Sydney, which is kind of in the bush. It's called the Blue Mountains, and it's kind of really picturesque. It might be something like you would compare in the States, like a Wisconsin or something, like really pretty gardens and, sort of really green and like small communities and really beautiful. So, we grew up in an area where I guess everybody knew each other. And yeah, it was a very much community feel. But my origins were Italian. So I think, my parents were the first off the boat, the first generation to Australia. And for those of you who didn't know Australia in the 80s, it was, the Blue Mountains was not a place where there were many Italians. So they were very much outside the community. So we kind of, grew up in our own little part of the world, like the supermarket was our backyard. And that's, now I'm, appreciate it. But back then I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand planting and pulling things out. It was horrendous. But it was a really nice way to grow up.
Yeah. Do you speak any Italian?
So here's the funny thing. I speak a little bit of Spanish because I spent a lot of time in South America, but I speak no Italian. I understand
Oh,
it. I
wow.
mean, I've been in Italy so many times. I'm going again in a few weeks, but I speak none.
But you still lived the culture even though you weren't there. So at least you got a little taste. What does it feel like when you go back to Italy?
It's honestly like it's tear jerking. It is literally the best country. Like it's impossible to be depressed and not have a good time in Italy. It's impossible, you know.
Is it, I've never been, so is it, some people say uh, pasta is a little better outside of Italy. Is that a lie? Is pasta better
Yes,
in Italy?
that is straight up a lie. There's just no question about it.
I figured. Do
Yeah.
you cook any Italian food?
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, for me, it's quite like it just goes with part of the culture. Do you know what I mean? And it's also something quite satisfying about, doing something handmade. It's less and less now, but Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like, I definitely know my way around the pants. Like, usually, what happens in an Italian family is you get a cook set bought for you when you're 5 or 6 years old, and that shit just stays there until you're married, and then it gets passed down. So usually, the soon to be wife needs to be vetted by the aunties and uncles for, is she? It's called Bessemer. Is she Bessemer worthy? And they pass that down the line. So it's taken very seriously.
What a nice tradition. That's what I
Some
love
would
about
say.
the
And yet
tradition.
none of the women in my family cook. It's just the men.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, Marco, how was, because you had this different culture and you were getting acquainted, how was high school like? Did you keep to yourself, or were you outgoing? How were you doing with that?
Yeah, it's like super interesting question. I was like a social animal, not really at the start because I think being Italian and especially in the Blue Mountains, it was just no one heard Italian. Like I still remember being 8 years old or 9 years old, and my mum going to a shop and asking for an eggplant, and the next minute, they're almost fighting each other, like my mum and this lady, because they're like, "You fucking Italians, go back," sort of
Go
thing.
back.
It was very insular. So I had a similar experience in school where I wasn't really accepted. Like I kind of I'd be at school and I'd have Tupperware and I'd be opening up plastic things of Tupperware with, like you name it. But all the other kids are eating sausage rolls and stuff like that. So I was a bit of an outsider. Then I think probably I played football only for one season. In Australia, it's called rugby union, and just I only did that for 1 year, I really don't like sports at all. I'm a surfer, but I really don't like sports at all. And yeah, I mean, just from that one year, I got to know a few people, and then they kind of let me in. And so from then on, I had a great experience at school, but I was not good at school at all. I didn't get the marks to get into university. For me, it was a total and utter social event.
Yeah, yeah. And what did you think? You're seeing you don't like school, and but you're enjoying certain parts of it. What were you thinking you wanted to be at that time? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Um, well, actually, quite interestingly, like I always knew I wanted to do business. I never knew what that actually meant. Back, when I was that age, I had no idea how difficult it was. I really didn't. I was so naive. And I thought, look, my big dream was to have a business or even, like a well-paying job where I could travel. That was always what I wanted to do. I kind of imagined myself one day being in an office in the city and flying places. And that became a reality down the track, which, was nowhere near as good as what I probably dreamt it up to be in my head. But yeah, I always felt like I wanted to be in business. I just never realized how much of a challenge that would have been.
Absolutely. And nowadays there are so many more entrepreneurs than before, social media helps out a lot as well.
Yeah.
How, what kind of an impact do you think, if they did have any impact, your parents, with this decision of yours to one day be a business owner and travel?
Yeah, it's pretty much a heavy influence. I'm not super close to my family, like through whatever means. Maybe I'm the black sheep, and I've sort of let go of a little bit of that construct. I mean, we're still in each other's lives and stuff like that. But as far as influence went, like my father had well, I guess his father, when he came to Australia, had no English. They came after the war and they built a bakery in Sydney. And then they also built a motel. And so my father kind of inherited this motel, nothing fancy, like a roadside motel, nothing out there. But, after many years of working it, my father was able to get it to somewhat of a success. I think, this is before all the tax. I think he was turning over maybe $1 million a year or something like that, but he was supporting two families, and he still had debt on the property, which my non-nil grandfather passed on. So I watched them struggle their whole life with
Yeah.
business and debt, and supporting two families because one he sort of took his brother's family in as well. So I got to know business at a very early age, but I got this program in my head from them that things are hard. You got to work hard. Money comes hard. You got to save, which I realize now at 42 that that's really bad advice. But it's the best they knew at the time. So
Yeah.
I did have lots of influence with business for sure.
And this is interesting because I'm from Peru and I live in the US.
Ah,
So
okay.
I migrated here, right? And I
Donde? We're in Peru.
Huancayo. It's about six
Oh,
hours
beautiful.
away from the capital. And my mother's idea of things was the opposite. It was always easy. But I did see the struggle through building a business. But I think it's such an important point to touch on. Um, how was it that you were able to detach from that mentality of it's so hard, things have to be so difficult to make money?
Look, the truth is, I met a Romanian, and that Romanian, I met her on Tinder while she was on a holiday, and we
Oh,
got married 3 months later. And that woman just changed everything because, I didn't realize, I don't know if you know the history of Romania, but, they've just come out of communism. They're only 30 years out since 89, and Ceausescu was their leader at the time. And it's a very interesting story about the history of it. And if anyone's listening, I mean, you can YouTube it, but coming from sort of oppression, you learn stuff, you learn what hard is, and your threshold for hard is much different. So if you can imagine that, the whole country was ruled by, you it was communist. You weren't allowed to have anything. They would line up all week for one bottle of milk and one bottle of oil and one orange for a family of four. Heating was 1 hour a day. And it gets to -40. Television was 1 hour a week, and it was propaganda. So the thing that happened was they once the leader was overthrown, and he was actually shot live on TV, him and his wife, on Christmas Day, just to give you a reflection. Romania, it's crazy, but I'm telling you all of this because basically once the government fell, everything was private and it was all owned by the government. So once it fell, it was like the wild, wild west. It was like you hustle to survive, otherwise you got nothing. So you can imagine 30 years of Romanians have just hustled, and so they're real pragmatic business people. So they know how to hustle, and they're all doing legitimate business. And so when I met my wife and she saw all these programs, and I was in a struggling business at the time just before COVID, it made me realize like this program in my head is absolutely fixable. And it just took me a long time to see that I had this not one generation, but two, three generations of war, lack, have to fight for what you've got in my head. I had inherited that.
yeah. And with that previous mindset, it's hard to have a vision also, or if you do, it's like it's so far away from my reach, right?
Well, it just comes down to it's very hard to believe in it. It's very hard to believe that it's not easy. Do you know what I mean? When you've got all that conditioning in the head.
Yeah. It's interesting because I do see that contrast with my mom saying, it's you want to do it? It's possible. You want to get it? You can. And I think that's one of the biggest things that have had an impact in my life is that sometimes, having a vision, not sometimes, all the time, having a vision gets you through the difficult moments because you know where you're going. You know it's going to happen at the end of the day. So you struggle, you do, but you can get there because you continue pushing. That's
Mm.
amazing. Good for you. So back to your story. We're in high school, and then you are not gonna go to college. And what happens then?
So I decide like probably you'll laugh. I wanted to be a chef, so I
I
went. You know what? Yeah, so I thought, yeah, look, I'm going to move to London. So I thought, look, if I can get the best experience I can and some chefs that I were following were in London. I thought, look, I just want the best. So I thought, look, I'm going to travel and I'm going to do it. So I just did that. I saved up enough money, and I literally just jumped on a plane and moved to London. And I
Wow.
had a 2-year visa, and I just started knocking on doors. And I just tried as many different places as I could till some people said yes. And I guess that's where my journey with travel started, really.
And how was it to make this shift from, I'm barely starting my life and I'm gonna work for someone as a chef? What is that experience like?
Look, quite honestly, again, it was like I just had a really good time. I just partied a
Mhm.
lot. I was 19. I just had such a good time. But I noticed in London it was so difficult. Like I worked in some good places. I worked in Richard Branson's rooftop gardens. I was there famously the night Marco Pierre White shut the restaurant, with 3 weeks' notice on one of my first shifts. So I realized working in some sort of more higher end places that actually being a chef was pretty shit. You're basically a laborer for food. There's no creativity. And at that time, early 2000s, 2001, 2002, um, you don't have like they were treating you really bad. Imagine kind of being a rock and roll star, but without any of the glamour, without any of the fame, and no money. So that's basically what it was.
And
So
yeah, and no, and I was gonna ask, and so I'm assuming that being treated that way and living that way also helps you become stronger, no, and have some sort of a work ethic, because even though you're not given everything, you gotta continue hustling.
yeah, and I think look, the work ethic's always there, but in my mind, I kept thinking there has to be an easier way, but I never really believed there could be. I still had this program kind of running, and then I think one day I had a bit of an argument with a chef because, like, I mean, my job was just basically making sauces. That's all I did, and I think I was making £5.50 an hour or something like that. And I went to Spain. I took a few weeks off when I went to Spain, and like something happened. Like I realized, I was eating some tapas in a bar in San Sebastian, like overlooking the ocean, like classic. Big open white shirt. 19, screaming at senoritas, having a good time, and then all of a sudden, I realized like he hands me this beer and it's just like a little bit of tapas on top, and I eat it. And I think like what was that? And then like I order something else, and like I'm eating, and I realized where am I? Like what is going on here? And then I started to taste, and I realized like food's not meant to be complicated. It's not meant to be this kind of arduous process to produce something for a bunch of people that want to be in a kind of not food world. It's kind of like almost the last push of opulence in their world. And I didn't want to be part of that anymore. In a moment, it just snapped me out of it, and I realized I can't do this anymore. So I quit. I quit while I was in Spain. I had no money, like literally no money. I think I had a couple of £100 or euro left to get me on my feet when I got back. So I slept in a park for for a week or so, just because I didn't want to leave, and I had some friends staying in a hostel. I just loved it. And so I
Yeah.
went back with this new mindset of I have to do things differently. And like most of the things that's happened in my life, like this weird call to action happened. I had sort of a girl I was living with at the time. Her boyfriend, I was in a shared house, and her boy, she just started seeing this guy, and he was a plumber in a big, massive, you know, job site in I think it was in Hammersmith in London. So she said, "Look, he's looking for a plumber. Do you know how to do plumbing?" And I'm like, "I mean, look, how hard is it? Water runs, it's gravity fed, right? It all goes downhill. It should be fine. Yeah, yeah, I'll go for the job." So, and it was paying quite well. I think at the time it might have been, something like twenty pounds an hour. So for me, it was like 4 times my salary. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to see if I can get it. So I went in with the interview, super serious. And I'm talking to this English guy, and his name was Kanzi, and he was interviewing me. He's asking me all these plumbing questions, and I'm giving him the best answers I knew how, and oh, pipes, and yeah, all good. And then about sort of halfway through the interview, he stops and he goes, "You have no fucking idea what you're talking about, do you?" And I'm like, no. What do you mean? Like, they're pipes, man. Like, you put this here. It's, what are you talking about? Of course I know what I'm talking about. He's like, look, here's the deal, right? I'm going to pay you, but I'm going to take half your salary. I want you to clock on here every day. And he showed me, if any of these people come in to this job site, you're to come immediately to this room here and not move till I come and get you. So he ended up charging for another guy to, be on site. So he took half my wage and I got half the wage. So I kind of, doubled my income, and I had to work less. And he said, if you want to go on holidays and you go traveling, just give someone your card to clock on, and I'll still pay you half.
Mm,
So for me, it was like all of a
perfect.
sudden Europe opened up, So it was kind of like one of the first miracles to happen to me in my I think I was 20 at the time.
You know what I think is very, very interesting and delightful about your story is the fact that throughout your life, it seems that you enjoyed the journey, which
I
is
tried to.
right. So even though you were going through certain things, you were still having fun and still, enjoying it more than a lot of us, that are like not really having a good time while we're going through craziness. So, uh-huh. Go ahead.
That's an interesting reflection. It didn't feel like that at the time. I felt totally out of control and aimless, a lot of the time. It was just massive hit and hopes, and sometimes it connected and sometimes it didn't. But it's interesting to hear you say that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The way you tell it, I feel like if I were to watch the movie of your life, I'd be like, yeah, there are certain moments where he's there, having a good time, and then there's all the craziness. And so you started traveling there and went to how many countries
So
within?
at that stage, I saw most of Western Europe, South Africa, and all through the UK. So that wasn't my biggest journey with travel at that particular time, but it's kind of where I started and started seeing lots of different cultures, and it sort of got me thinking about, it's so interesting the perspective you get, and it changes every 10 years of your life, I think. So what the stuff I see now when I travel, I would never have even comprehended the questions I ask now when I was in my 20s. So I think the travel's still just as interesting when you get older. You just look at it through a much different lens.
Yeah, yeah. And within that time frame in your 20s, early 30s, what would you say was the country that you enjoy the most?
Like I've got to say, like South America was really
Mm.
good. I really enjoyed Peru, Trujillo in the north there for the surfing. Like I'm a bit of a I've been surfing for 25 years and I absolutely loved it. I love Pichilemu in Chile. Um,
So every
where
country that you went to, you really explored it a bit more than just going to the capital, yeah?
oh yeah, like I spent 5 weeks I think in every country in South America.
Wow.
And like some of it was party, and then some of it was trekking in the mountains, and it's just was such an interesting perspective to see all of it. Now, I've seen most of Europe on this trip, pretty much all of Asia and, Sri Lanka. There's some continents I haven't been to that, maybe it'll attract me down the track, like India or that, but I'm not sort of like a Dalai Lama type, like I am spiritual, but like I'm not into the same, I guess, format as everybody else.
Yeah. How do you think that traveling broadens someone's perspective?
Now or then? Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, for someone else. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, for people that travel, you experience different cultures. Although you're not there for years, you kind of get to see the reality of every country, no? And the different cultures.
yeah, there's a couple of things that bear to mind. I mean, I think you can break it up into two parts. One is like the state of the country due to the political stuff at the top, and then two, opportunity in the country. And I've seen different things in all sorts of different countries. You may relate, but I'll give you a recent example. So, so we talked a bit about Romania, which has kind of got this hangover of kind of communism, but it's kind of cool, because they're all hustling, they're business people, and it's like a very funny mentality. They're all in this thing together. They've got Latin blood as well. It's a Latin based language, which is strange in that Eastern Bloc. But so that country accepts you with open arms, even though they've had this kind of hangover from kind of communism. But you go to somewhere like Serbia, or anywhere in the former Yugoslavia, like I've just been through Serbia, Montenegro, I can tell you it's very different. Like those Balkanic countries, although absolutely stunning and beautiful, their hangover is from genocide. So the difference is there's no there's no openness. It's closed,
Yeah.
and I see that as a culture because they've had to be that way. It's only my generation that saw it. It was 1991 where Kosovo was invaded, and then not to mention the NATO bomb in Belgrade. So it's really different to see these perspectives of people. We're the same age. I mean, that could have been me born there. So that's the first part. So I see it through a different lens politically now, but also the other part is what opportunities do you get? Like I've seen you really, if you come from a country where, maybe that's your day-to-day reality, you really have to want to be successful bad. You want it, you've got to have want it bad. It's possible. It's possible in every country, in every scenario, but you have to want it bad, you know?
Yeah, I mean, minimum salaries and opportunity is very definitely, in many of the countries, very difficult to find sometimes. But like you said, I think in every country you do have the opportunity. It's just a little less than in certain countries. But how were you supporting yourself throughout?
So I was one of the very very fortunate people when I was younger. I bought a house when I was 18, and look, every year that house made, I don't know, something like 30,000 Australian dollars a year. So in American terms, that might be, I don't know what's that in. It might be like 20,000 USD a year. So what I would do is just take that money and just travel the shit out of it. I did that pretty much all the time. Sometimes I had more money, sometimes I had less, but that's pretty much what I did.
Yeah, that's a hustling traveler. Because
A little bit of hustling,
where
yeah.
would you stay? Would you stay in hostels? Would you stay?
Back then, yeah, for me it was 100% hostels. I took 13 months, almost 14 months around South America, and I was with my brother and my cousin, just hostels. And I think I spent maybe 25,000 Australian dollars, which is I think in US maybe 18, 17,000 US dollars, something like this, including my plane ticket. So you can imagine, what I mean. It's not five-star,
Yeah,
but the need for me to see and experience was far greater than the way I was doing it.
priceless. For sure. For sure. I mean, it's amazing that you were able to actually travel so much. That's why I said it seems that, so many things have happened and you've had to overcome things, but you've made it happen and traveled so much. Have you ever been to Nicaragua?
That's last on my list. So Central America I have left because it needs more time, not just a quick trip.
Mm.
Have you
So,
been?
so I have, and there's this place that I love that you have to go. It's called San Juan.
Taiwan, I've heard about it. Yeah.
So beautiful. The view, it's like a picture, like a beautiful, the ocean looks amazing, and it's just a
Yeah.
little nice place to visit. So maybe,
It's on my list now. You've given it to me.
for
Doesn't
sure.
take much to hit my list, but it has now. Yeah.
So how long ago did you meet your wife?
Yeah, so I mean, it was in 2020. It's kind of a bit of a funny story, really, how it all happened just pre-COVID. I mean, should I go into details? I mean, well, look, I mean, I think probably before COVID, I had actually had multiple businesses going. I had a coffee business where I was doing wholesale roasting, and I had some cafes, and shit wasn't going good. You know, we had some bushfires in Australia, and at that time there was no one coming into the CBD cafes. And business just dried up. So I had to systematically get rid of everything. I was left with some debt. I was pretty heavily depressed, quite honestly, and I was just in a situation that really I've never been in my life before. It was 2019, and I couldn't actually go to work anymore. I was just clinically cooked. I had too many people I was responsible for, and I couldn't manage it. My energy was everywhere, and I was just so naive. I had hit a point that yeah, I was out of control, and I did end up seeing a psychiatrist. I was on some depression medication for about 3 months, and I remember I went on a surf trip because I hadn't told anyone. Like in Italian families at that time, like if you say you're depressed, they're like, oh, you just hear nothing. It's just like silence. They're like, he's talking about his feelings. What? Like no one wants to talk about their feelings. It's definitely sweep it under the fucking rug and man up. So
Yeah.
it's very difficult to actually. And I remember what sort of I said it to my mom, and she's sort of like, it was just like, you could have heard a pin drop. She's like, oh, have you had dinner? Like it didn't register. Then after time, we got there. But I remember I was doing a surf trip to King Island, which is a place just it's an island off Tasmania in the southern Bass Strait of Australia. Very cold water, and I was with about 6 or 7 of my friends. You have to fly in there on a little Cessna, and I got to the point where on this surf trip, like I couldn't talk. Believe it or not, like I wanted to talk. The thoughts were in my head. I wanted to say words, but nothing came out of my mouth. I couldn't talk. I was just completely cooked. And I remember it was like rock bottom for me. I couldn't socialize anymore. I couldn't run my business anymore. I was in debt. I was just like totally cooked. And I remember just this had been going on for months, if not more than a year. And I was just sitting in my apartment. I live by myself in Melbourne, and I just wrote on a piece of paper, like I am just going to pretend that I have no problems and that I'm a normal person for just 1 hour a month. I'm just going to pretend that everything's okay. And I'm going to lie to myself. I'm going to lie to my mind. I'm going to lie to everyone. And I'm just going to pretend I'm a normal human being. And I thought, what's the best way to do that? I'm just going to go on a date. I'm not going to go on a date to hook up with someone or anything. I'm just going to go with the intention to just like connect with a human being. You know what I mean? And just hear someone's story, because like I was so alone, so isolated. I had nothing left in the tank. Like I was having some serious dark thoughts, which I never thought would actually happen to me, and I didn't have any tools to get through it. Now I abundance of tools. It's all out there, it's easy to, but back then I had nothing, And so I decided I would go on a Tinder date, and I went on a Tinder date. And that first date I had, after I wrote that, it was 2 days after I wrote that down, I met my wife, So pretty weird. Yeah, pretty weird.
Wow.
So yeah, I think she messaged me. I messaged her. We talked for a little bit, and then she's like, "Look, I don't want to go out. I'm sick of it. I don't want to date out. I'm sitting inside with my sister." So I said, "Well, look, I'm happy to cook you guys dinner if you want. Like, I'm just sitting at home." They're like, "Yeah, sure. I come cook us dinner." So I went to their place in South Yarra, and I just cooked dinner, and we stayed up till 4:30 in the morning drinking wine, talking about Spain, travel, this, that. And 1 week later, I went and picked her up, and she moved into my house from her sisters. So that's it.
That was definitely the reward for you betting on yourself at that time of a difficult time, because you weren't expecting it. How amazing! What a great surprise!
It's weird and so funny because life just keeps doing that. Like, really, it's amazing how it works, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And now it's happened to you. So you believe that that could be a thing. So you're attracting it more and more and more. And so, how did you start your digital marketing agency? How did that come about?
So it really came out of desperation. So I finished the businesses, and once that was all done, I moved to another part of Australia. I moved up north in Queensland to a place called the Gold Coast, and like quite honestly, I didn't want another business. I was just completely mentally cooked. Recently married, I'm just like I just want a job. Just give me a job. That's all I want to do. And like I have more connections in Australia than probably most people would in a lifetime, especially for good jobs. Because I had a corporate life before, and like I just couldn't get a job to save my life. You know, like most people said, "Yep, no worries, take this, take that," and then I would go into the interview cycle, and that interview cycle would take 6 months. You know, and then they'd kind of go, "Oh, well, we're not 100% sure you're the right guy for the job. You might be a bit too old, or maybe this role's, you know, you're a bit too senior for this role. You need something else." So I just never got really a job. And then, you know, I think I got offered a role, which I did want, which was, I think it was 140,000 Australian dollars. And that was, I don't know, American, maybe 90K, something like that. And I really wanted that job because it was safe and easy. And before that came about, I always thought I would get that job, and I was waiting 12 months to get to the final part of the interviews and work with this, you know, CEO to get the job. And you know, it was just so difficult for me because I just didn't want to go back into business. And then my wife, her sister, and her were talking, and you know, I don't know, I had done something for them on socials, and they said, "Oh, you know how to do this stuff? Like, well, instead of looking for a job, why don't you charge people and do this?" And I'm like, "Oh, no one's going to pay for that. So I don't know how to do it, and it's not going to work." And they said, "No, well, why don't you try?" So I originally rang someone that had a agency in Melbourne, and I said, "Look, why don't you send me leads? I'll bring you customers, and you pay me a commission." And that's how it started. So, you know, this particular guy that I knew in Melbourne, he was sending me clients. I would close them, and I would send them, you know, and I'd get a commission. But then, you know, down the track, he just didn't pay me, you know, because he was so disorganized in his business, and he had a big business. He still does. We're still friends, but he just didn't pay me, you know, and it took so long, and I hated begging for money. You know, it's just not me at all. So I just said, "Look, dude, let's just leave it where it is. You know, I can't do it." So I told the clients, "Hey, look, I'm out. I don't want to work with this guy anymore. He's not paying me on time. He's a good guy. Stay with him. You'll do well with him, but it's not for me." And they're like, "Marco, we actually we just like you. Can't we just work with you?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. I never thought about that." So I don't know. Like maybe I'll ask Brendan. So I asked the guy. Well, I've said his name now. Um, and yeah, so I asked him, and he said, "Yeah, mate, I don't care. Yeah, if they want to go with you, go with them." I was like, "Okay, well that was easy." And so I told the clients, and they said, "Yeah," and that's how the business started. And then it just grew from there. You know.
Wow, that's amazing. Taking risks after risks. And so now you've had your business for how long?
We're in this is since 2020, so yeah, we're in the fourth year now, and our second iteration of the business. So we started off doing Facebook ads and Instagram ads and social media, and I had a lot of experience with advertising in my own businesses. You know, and actually in an early age, my father also had an advertising agency, so I learned a little bit about advertising early on as well. And you know, I just really like kind of love it. Like that's been the thing that I've enjoyed the most out of, you know, all my time in business. And I
Good.
think, you know, mostly because it's predictable, and you know, it's pretty easy to, you know, figure out what's working, then put fuel on it when you see results and people are happy and they're excited. You know, there's no better feeling. So I guess probably for my wife and I, we realized that the social iteration of the business is just so much work. Like we can't travel with it. There's a lot of content creation, and it just became, you know, a lot more focused on video, which is where I didn't want to take the direction of the business. So
Mhm.
iteration two was fire all my customers, and start again and just focus in on ads, which is what we do now. And that was also a very difficult decision for me to do, like, to let go and
I
start
bet.
again with nothing, like
I
no customers. And I was doing Google ads as well, which is really difficult. It ain't easy. And I had no clients and I had no income. I was just, you know what I mean? I think I was in Bali at the time with my wife, and I think I got kidney stones actually why I was there, because the fear lives in the kidneys. And, I worked a lot to move past that. But yeah, starting again and being flexible is really fucking hard.
Yeah, no, definitely. And so what would be the biggest difference between Google Ads and choosing for those people that are trying to make their choice? Should I put ads on Instagram, TikTok, all these platforms versus Google Ads? What would be the main difference?
Look, ultimately, it comes down to your business and its goals. So, there's all these different channels that you can use to basically create awareness about your business or your brand. So, I think what it is it's a process of elimination to see what actually moves the needle in your business the most. So
Mm,
if it's e-com, you might consider an influencer will give you a great return. Or if it's a product that's highly visual, like obviously, pick the socials because it's so easy for people to see how it works. If it's lead gen, then lead gen will work like a firecracker on Google Ads, because if you think about it like this, like on social media, like we're all there to be social, you know what I mean? So you've got to stop the scroll, and it's difficult. It's kind of like being in a bar at midnight and screaming at everyone, "Hey, come over here! I want to sell you something." They're like, "Man, just go away, dude. I'm here to drink with my mates." So it's a bit more difficult. Where Google, um, the intent's so high. So if you think about it, like someone's needs a dentist, they're like, emergency dentist, need dentist now, where's a dentist near me? Like they're kind of bleeding from the neck, you know what I mean? Like they need a response now. So the traffic and the conversions that you get are far different. They're like right at the bottom of the funnel. So for me, Google ads and learning that was like just a natural progression. So I actually I actually had limited knowledge. I've been running ads for a long time, but no science behind it. And so I went in deep and learnt as much as I can. And then I about a year ago, it was a bit longer now, I just knocked on the door. I found the best Google Ads person that I could find pretty much on the planet. And I just basically begged her to coach me. And it took about 6 months of working with her at about, I think it was $1,000 a month. And I had no income or very barely any income. And she didn't coach anybody. I had to basically beg her to do it. And then, yeah, I mean, after 6 months, we worked out an arrangement between ourselves where she'd help me grow my business and she'd give me ongoing support one on one for the long term. And so we work really hand in hand now. So that was like a huge miracle for me that someone believed enough in the business and where I wanted to take it to be part of it. So
yeah.
um, I think it's just having the intention and just knowing this is exactly what I want to do, and I'll just do whatever it takes to make it. I don't like care about anything outside of it, although you should, and I
Sure.
do. But I just had so much focus, and
But
I
now
and I
you're
and
you're the Google Ads expert, which is what matters most, no?
I feel pretty well versed in it. Yes, I can tell you that. So for
So
sure.
let me ask you something that I think would be a question that a lot of people might have. There are people that are starting with their social media and others that have built businesses that are more stable. So if you're barely building your social media presence, how long would you, I know this, is very broad and it varies, but is there a time frame and kind of an amount, if any, that if you were to do Google ads, that would be worth the investment? Because I know if you do it for a day, you're not, you might not get return, or is it?
Well, look, it's pretty simple because with Google Ads, actually, you know pretty fast. You don't really need to wait. It's like
Mm.
pretty immediate. So usually, if you write a really good ad and the people searching for that ad have clicked on a keyword that you're bidding on and it's relevant to the ad and it goes to a website that's relevant to what the person typed in and they convert, kind of Google favors you and it gives you much cheaper CPC or cost per clicks. And it does it in a way where you kind of get this quality score. So the higher your quality score, the more traffic Google's going to send you. So if you get the message, you get the ad, you get the search term, and you get the website right, it's very fast to know whether it'll work or not. I mean, if you think typically with SEO, I mean, you could wait 6 to 12 months to rank organically for those keywords
Yeah.
where Google, you can kind of force yourself into the auction, into the top position. There's some tricks. You have to, know what you're doing, but you can just force yourself into the top position. And by doing that, you can rank number one within sort of 24 to 48 hours, so you don't have to wait.
And with this service, I know you would be the one putting the funnel together, putting the website together, if
It's
necessary.
all me. Yeah, yeah, it's all me. So there's two parts to my job now. So number one is get traffic to a website, which is kind of Google Ads part, and then the second part, which is virtually where I can fall down, and this is what I've found with like actually a good deal of my clients. Especially for lead gen, we work a lot in the healthcare space, and basically they've got really crap websites, and so I can send really good traffic and it's expensive traffic, and we're talking like leads can be anywhere from 70 to 200 USD a lead. But their conversion rate is very low because the website is just crap. So in my design background, I've started sort of designing landing pages. So the second part to it is actually designing the landing page and optimizing it so that we can get the highest conversion rate possible and we don't rely on what their website is. And I do that by actually designing it around exactly what I said: the ad, the search, the key term, getting a better quality score, and it just results in much higher conversions. So for me, it's really exciting to have that level of control for people.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And every business needs social media help nowadays. And roughly, if it's like I said, a beginner's situation, what is the cost for this outside of the amount that they would have to pay for the Google ads?
I would say if you're starting out, it's better to have a go yourself. If you don't have the resources to pump into paying for somebody, because this is one of those things that I think you would end up falling flat on by going to a Fiverr or by going to if someone's charging you anything under $1,000 a month, you're not going to get a great job done. That's just it. I mean, I charge well north of that, but the difference is you can learn some of the key skills and make the mistakes yourself, and that will save you a lot of headaches by paying and waiting. And I think learning some of the key metrics is a good thing because it kind of allows you to see when you're paying someone good money to do it that they're getting the results and you understand the metrics. So there's lots of good resources out there. I'd be happy to put you in contact with, some of the people that teach traffic in a way where it's easy to learn as someone starting out. Because yeah, I think it can inhibit you to want to give it a go, especially if it's costing you a bomb.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's because I feel that in not only myself but everyone I've spoken to, that is not well versed in this area, you're like wondering, should I do this? Should I? There are so many options when it comes
Yeah.
to putting yourself out there that you're like, it's overwhelming sometimes. What is worth my investment? That's why I thought it was so important to talk about Google ads, because a lot of people don't know that these could be a little bit faster, like you said, and have a little
Yep.
more return, or know right away what if it's going to work for your business or not.
Totally, and the cool thing about all of these activities is it's just like if you look at it the way that it's kind of like a puzzle. This is how the lady who was coaching me explained it to me. You know, she said if you think about it like a puzzle, and you've got these corners of the puzzle, you know, you got to figure out which every business is different. You got to figure out, you know, which pieces of the puzzle you need to turn the dial up on your business. So, you know,
Mhm.
that could be Facebook and Instagram ads. Maybe that's 30% because you've kind of don't have a visual business that's lead gen. You know, so maybe you have a different strategy there. It's leading people in. You know, you might have YouTube ads. So YouTube ads might be part of your strategy if it's not only a visual product, but it might be something that you know, you're retargeting on a competitor's page because you know your audience is there. You know, then with Google ads, you know that there might be, you know, a certain percentage that you can't create awareness. Like a lot of visual products, you need to create awareness. That's done on social, you know, the social platforms. So maybe you have a different strategy there. Maybe you just basically betting on your brand. Maybe you just want to build your brand and build those in a keyword campaign. So it takes a few months to figure out all the different pieces and where they kind of fit. And once you got that puzzle down pat, it's just like it's just a machine. It works, you know.
Yeah, that's the only way to grow your business, even if you're up there already, you know? Everything is competition online nowadays. Marco, you're looking for your place now, right? The country that you're gonna stay in. Uh,
Yeah, and I found it. I
so
think.
you found it.
Yeah.
So you're staying there.
So I went full circle. We basically this year have been. I think we're on our 18th country now this year, and we decided in all the things that we've learned along the way. And look, we just I think we were in Japan for 2 months before this, and Bali before that, and you know all through Europe before that. So for us, we came full circle, and we decided that we want easy and easy would be for us to move back to Melbourne in Australia. And the reason why that is appealing for us is that, you know, you do take for granted a lot of the things like language. And that sounds like something so trivial and probably no one really understands that. And they probably won't get it unless they've tried to look at a country through would I live here lens. But being able to communicate, just going to a coffee shop and not saying habla inglés or you know, in Romanian vorbesc inglesa, you know, so it's something you really take for granted, you know. So when you don't have communication, it's very difficult to be part of a community. And not only that, when even if the community speaks English, when they're all together, it's not like they're all going to speak English because you're there. They're going to speak Spanish, Romanian, Portuguese. So it's very difficult to yeah, be part of a community. So for me, that was a big one. I think also understanding the amount of stress that it takes to move to a new country in terms of, especially Europe, most of the countries are socialist. So if you want to get a license, you got to go to a physical kind of place, get a piece of paper, take that piece of paper to another place. That other place has to stamp it. Then you take that piece of paper to another place. You know what I mean? Like everything is infinitely more difficult. So at 42, we realized let's just make our life super easy. Let's just move to Melbourne. We know the system. We know how it works. Let's just do it. So we came full circle after, you know, yeah,
Couple.
spending a full year on the road to find a better place to live. We found the best place was where we started.
That's amazing. You
Yeah.
like you said, you go out and you appreciate it now. Now you're gonna live a better life because you've seen that this is definitely your better place. Do you pack light? Is there when you travel? Are
God,
you
no.
a
We
packer?
have 3 suitcases, 2 surfboards. Like, it's fucking horrible. It's just so you know,
You would
it's
think that
really
with
bad.
a couple of years, you're like just a little bag and you know.
So for me, yes, just a little bag. My wife, no.
Oh wow, yes,
Yeah.
full the full experience with packing.
Yeah, but we have a car as well, so it's kind of nice. We just stack everything in the car and we're just driving. So before that, we had some friends in Bali take a suitcase to Romania for us, and in Japan we had a cousin there as well, which was able to help us. But I mean, yeah, it's been certainly a challenge with the bag because I mean we thought we were going to move. We literally came here with the intention of buying a place and just settling down, but it just that's the thing. You cannot be fixed on any one plan or idea.
Yeah, 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 yeah. We women need a lot of things to
Mm.
get ready. So I
And not to
totally.
mention, look, I do as well. I've got a few perfumes. I like hair products.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of things you can't. If I'm traveling outside of the US, I can take the little containers, but you can't really take all your stuff. So I put myself in your shoes, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what would I take?
It's intense. I should send you some photos.
Yeah, yeah, you should for sure. Marco, what is one thing or a couple of things that you've had to quit to become successful?
So easy. Planning, planning, and saving. They're the two things. Saving in this day and age, you cannot save money to become successful. Just
Mhm.
blocking energy. Do not
I,
save money. And the second thing is, yeah, you any plan that you have, be ready for that plan to be smashed and taken in half. And if you get fixated on this is the way it's going to be, you'll fail. And it's happened to me. So if I think, no, I've got to do it this way, this is the way I planned it, this is how you succeed, you keep going like that, you will fail
yeah,
every time.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Quit planning, quit saving.
I love the saving part. I think a lot of people know that now, you know, and social media helps with that. But we're so used to the saving culture. We're so used to the
Yeah.
saving culture. It's crazy.
Well,
But
it comes from thinking there's not enough.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And a lot of people, if you love what you're doing, you're not necessarily planning within a year, I'm going to retire, you know? So I think a lot of it comes from that, from people thinking, okay, well, at a certain age, I want to retire. And so they
Again,
say,
a plan, you know?
yes,
Like I see so many posts online about, oh, we're planning on moving to Spain in 2027. It's like, really? I mean, come on. Like you got a lot of life to live before then, you fool. So it's really for me, and it happens all the time. We planned to move to Portugal. We paid for a place for 2 months and got there and realized we don't want to live here, and we
yeah,
just left.
yeah,
Lost rent and just went. It's life. I mean, I threw the toys out of the pram, of course, but you know, you just have to be flexible. I think that's what I've learned. Don't plan. Hope for
that's
the best. Have a great intention.
yeah, 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 for sure. Where can they find you? Where can people that are watching or listening to this find you online?
Anyone can find me via the website. So you've got my website, which is called Hey Joyride, which quite interestingly has nothing to do with a digital agency. It started off as I was going to be running surf tours to an island off Australia, and then I just turned it into a digital agency. So it shows you how many times I've had to be flexible and change. So you can either get me there, or you can get me on my socials, which is at Marco underscore Assanti or at Hey Joyride, and on socials I'm there. I don't post that often, but yeah, you can see part of the travels and a bit about me and my crazy Romanian wife.
Amazing. And I'm gonna make sure that we put all the links here on the YouTube once we have that interview uploaded. I thank you so much for the time, Marco, and for the golden nuggets and for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you listening to my story and asking some great questions. So uh, I'm very grateful. Thank you.
I'm very grateful as well. I appreciate you. And I appreciate you all for watching or listening to this podcast. My name is Sara Nunez V, and I am your host. I will see you on the next episode.